This is Dreadbox Artemis. The Artemis is a 6-voice desktop polyphonic analog synthesizer with quite a few more tricks under its hood than one might expect. What's up and welcome back to another video. My name is Devin Belanger and it's been a little while since I've done a synth video, a synth review. So that's because I've been really busy recently. I've been falling behind a little bit on a lot of my stuff that I've been trying to do between juggling, being on tour, finishing my album, doing a bunch of stuff in terms of videos that I can't quite post yet, but they're really exciting. So I was finally able to sit down recently with the Dreadbox Artemis, which was graciously loaned to me by the one and only Jay Hosking. Shout out, go check out his channel. He does the most amazing synth jams. And I don't have time to fully dive in yet and make a full deep dive video, but I can at least share with you guys my thoughts as I've been programming patches, which I'm hoping to be able to get a custom patch bank out soon. Check the description if you do see that. It's probably gonna be out there hopefully in the next couple days. And you know what? I just figured that I've been using it a ton. It's fresh on my mind. While I might not have the time right now to do a full in-depth review, I can at least bring you guys my first impressions and my thoughts, my honest thoughts. Again, this is not a sponsored video, as I know a lot of you have been asking me for my opinion on the Artemis. So starting off, how does it sound? Well, take a listen for yourself. I think it sounds pretty amazing. There are no external effects anywhere in this demo, except for a compressor, which I'll talk about later. All right, so for the rest of the video, I'm just gonna jump onto the front panel and walk you through making a patch from scratch and kind of freeform tell you about what my thoughts are on the synth. Also, if you're still watching up to this point and you've enjoyed the video and you're learning something, please take just a moment, like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. All right, let's get started. All right, starting from an init preset. And the first thing we can tell is that this synth has that iconic VCO heft that it's cliche to say, but I still have not found a digital oscillator that sounds like a VCO. My test for determining if a synth has good oscillators, and let me know if you do the same thing, is can I just turn up the release on a single sawtooth wave with no vintage knob, no funny business, no effects, no anything, and then just, you know, have it sound like a playable patch? And the answer for the Artemis is yes, absolutely. These VCOs sound great. They actually remind me a little bit of the oscillators on my Oberheim synths, like the TO5 and the OBX8, in that they're hyper bright, but unlike really bright, maybe cheaper oscillators, they still have a really nice weight and body, and of course that drifting imperfection. So really, you know, A+ on the oscillators. Now we're gonna go ahead and just to show you how you could do a bread and butter sound if you don't even want to get into the weird effects and digital side of this. Let's just make a really bread and butter analog synth sound here. So we'll do a mix of our two VCOs. And here we're getting to the first thing that I don't like about this synth. Maybe this will grow on me, but I really dislike this single knob to choose wave shapes. Essentially how it works, and I'll zoom in here, is this one knob essentially gives you all the different possible combinations of what the two oscillators would be. So all the way to the right, we have two triangle waves. I'll detune these. And all the way to the left, we have 2 sawtooth oscillators. And then, as we go through, we've got, saw and square, square and square, triangle and square, and triangle and triangle. And that's fine, but it's just, I get that it's a way to save space, because then they would have had to have had like a wave shape selector as well as a individual kind of like oscillator. And I get why they did that, because otherwise they would have had to have had individual buttons for oscillator wave shape, or maybe individual knobs. But to me, I would have rather had just like 2 buttons that individually go through the different wave shapes. This is weird to me. I don't like it. But anyways, let's go back. So we've got our 2 sawtooth waves. We'll do like the classic patch. Fully open filter. We've got a high pass filter, which is great. Reminds me of the Prophet 6, and it's so useful to have a resonant high pass filter. I use that a ton on the Prophet 6 and on the UDO Super Gemini Super 6. And it's really cool on a little desktop synth like that, like the TO5, the GS Music stuff. They don't have a high pass filter, and it's really great. You can kind of hear what I mean, like the Oberheim characteristics, right? Let's bring up some release. And then we've got our low pass filter, of course. Beautiful sounding, right? Let's bring up some resonance. It's a really nice sounding filter. Watch your ears. Very cool. First thing I was really curious about, because I reviewed the Nymphes, is I was trying to think to myself, is this the same filter and oscillators of the Nymphes, just kind of more? My understanding is that, at least from my ears, the Nymphes sounds a lot more kind of like weighty and a little bit less sort of fizzy, whereas, almost more like a Juno or a Prophet, whereas this really feels more like an Oberheim style of synth, where it's really light and crispy and fizzy, and the filter also does the Korg sort of like MS-20 thing, where if you listen, it distorts at high resonance. So probably really good for acid, actually. Like, yeah, that'd be a really sweet synth for acid. I'd say right off the bat, like, you've got a really good sounding synthesizer. Let's go ahead and make like a pulse width modulation patch. We're going to our LFOs here. We've got 2 LFOs that are kind of independent but kind of connected. So let's go ahead and do pulse width. Let's change the wave. You can see it says the wave over here. Triangle, ramp, saw, square, random. And we're making it affect both of the oscillators now. So now we've got a classic pulse width sound. A little bit of resonance. And you'll notice, if you've been paying attention, we've had quite a bit of a difference in volume, and I wanted to leave off the compressor first because I wanted to show you, like, I'll do an even more obvious example. Let's move to triangle waves. Same patch, like way quieter. Sometimes synths that allow you to really, have a large variety of tones have a huge dynamic range, and therefore can, either blow your eardrums out if you have a really high resonance sound, watch out, or just kind of be like that's full loudness, kind of plinky and quiet. And that's why I really think it really benefits having a software or hardware compressor. Definitely highly recommend using a compressor with this synth. I just noticed it was a little quieter and more dynamic than some of the other instruments I've used. A couple quick things I liked about the synth too. We've got a dedicated like filter FM knob, and press a button and it's noise. I pretty much, in my patch bank, which you'll be able to grab soon, almost every patch uses a little bit of noise filter FM. It's just the best. Same deal with actual FM. When you start to cross-modulate the oscillators, it reminds me a little bit of the prologue again. Maybe it's the filter as well, but like to me, this is like a really prologue-y sound. Like it really gets into that dirty characteristics really well. There's other great things too. Sub-oscillator or the noise. We'll jump into the last thing before I show you the effects and then just play some patches is gonna be the menu, which there are actually a lot of really cool and unique options. The most important of which I think is actually the drive. So this is a 3 set levels of pre-filter drive. So you've been hearing it on low. Remember again, we talked about the dynamic range, mid. Wow, all of a sudden that body starts to come in and it starts to sound a lot more profity or mogy and less Oberheimy, right? And then high. Really overdriven. Let's do that from low to high quick. So off. It's like really clean and not saturated. Low. Probably your most used for polysynth sounds. Mid really gives it more of that profit characteristic. Remember the overdriven filter. Mini mode profit style. And then high. That's probably more like your mini mode style. I absolutely adore that this synth has this feature, and I wish more synths did this. Synth manufacturers, if you're watching, the ability to control pre-filter drive, this is a perfect menu control, because one of the reasons why a lot of mono synths just sound better, there's no other way of putting it, but better than polysynths for bass sounds is because when you only have to put one oscillator through the filter, you can juice it up and drive it and saturate it more. Whereas polysynths, if you want that clean sound that people tend to go for, you don't really want a super high amount of drive. If you have 6 voices, 8 voices, 10 voices, all hitting the filter, it's gonna sound messy, it's gonna sound overly distorted. If we jump to mono, now we've got a really great saturated mono synth voiced synth. Anyways, I could keep talking about this, but I won't. We've been hearing it dry the entire time, but why you'd want to get the Artemis is because of the effects, right? Because that's what they're trying to essentially sell. What I wanted to show you before is that it is really a capable analog synth without it, but what the Artemis is trying to position itself as is the analog synth with really good, versatile built-in effects. And I think it mostly succeeds. I'll just go through quickly. The distortions are my least favorite of the 4. Nothing wrong with them at all, but I have 2 gripes. We're nerds here, so I'll tell them what they are. Using them in parallel, I really don't like how it sounds. It's almost like there's like some like analog to digital conversion that has some weird latency. Not a fan of the distortions in parallel, so you pretty much have to fully commit. And then if I'm fully committing, I'd rather just use this phenomenal analog pre-filter drive. The mod is good, it's solid. Tape chorus is a nice one. If I do a full review, I'll talk more about this in depth, but I have nothing against the mod or the distortion, but I just feel like for this synth character, it's so raw and powerful, and then when you start adding the distortion in the mod, it kind of loses it a little bit for me and feels a bit more like a VST. However, where the effects start getting really good is the delays. The BBD is pretty cool. The random repeater, we're getting into granular territory. You heard me playing with this in the intro jam. What a unique delay. And we have probability, so we can make it really low probability so you can just play your normal things. And then every once in a while it hits. Like, that's one of the coolest built-in effects on a synth I've ever seen. So shout outs, Sine Vibes for that. That's amazing. And then let's move on to the reverb. So delay, let's take it off for now. The reverbs are, I'm happy to say, exquisite as well. They're so good. I knew they would be. Incredible. And this is only the large. It can go crazy, huge. We're on full wet, by the way. Size, feedback, speed, have a bit of modulation, depth, really deep, mix. Let's go. You can just straight up create pads out of this. Like if I go, crazy. Cloud, another granular one. I wish there wasn't clicks when you adjusted this one, but I get it. Like what? We can double up on our granular. Incredible, right? In fact, I'm actually gonna save this patch. All right, well, that is where I'll wrap up this quick first impressions, which ended up not being so quick. I spent a lot of time on the synth, and that's because I think there's a lot to talk about, but that is really only scratching the surface. So if you do want a longer, more in-depth review, let me know, and I'll try to work something out, either reboring this or grabbing one from Dreadbox. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let's do a couple more sounds to play us out.